Everyone who is tuning in tonight. And if you are, we are very excited to be here with you. I am Ben.
And I'm Daryl, and we're live on Facebook and YouTube too,
Once
actually. So
again,
hey, how you
it
doing, man? How was your week?
was good. It was very good. How was yours?
Yeah, doing well. I heard your lovely wife Beth was on a podcast, and I just checked that out. That was awesome. Did she record that this week, or did that just drop this week?
It was recorded a couple of weeks back,
Okay,
um, but it was just released yesterday.
yeah, that was a lot of fun.
It was.
So
It was.
cool. And then I checked out Aaron's weekly. If you guys don't know Aaron Tomlinson, you need to go check him out. We'll throw something in there. I'll go find the message and actually drop it in here. But I think what he shared today, we talked about what we wanted to talk about a few days ago. And then when I was listening to what he was talking about, I'm like, damn, this is like
Synchronicity.
perfect, man. This is like actually,
He's really been on a roll lately too.
oh
Since he came
man.
back on Sundays, I mean, he's been on a tear.
Yep, absolutely. So that's just been an absolute blast. Um, so this week it was sort of like I was just driving when and thinking about stuff, and sometimes it hits me how some things are so basic that we tend to forget how vital they are, how much it's a cornerstone of what it is to be human, because our brains like to automate things. If there's something we do repetitively, your brain is an energy miser, doesn't want to expel any energy, doesn't have to. So it'll turn it automatic, throw it in the back of your mind, and you'll just sort of not really realize that you're doing it. And so it was like choice is one of those things, the ability to choose. And then looking at some of your musings, that's a very big common theme that I see you write a lot about, just that choice and spirituality. So it seemed like that might be a fun thing to talk about.
Yeah, autonomy is a very important trait that more humans should be seeking.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, I don't know. So when you think of spirituality, choose your own adventure. I also thinking maybe we could talk a little bit about how we've lived this out, how we've personally experienced the adventure that we sort of found ourselves on, which really sort of begins with different choices that we made. Um, so I don't know, man. What's drops in your brain when you think about that?
Well, I think for one, I mean, any path you choose to go on or any choices you tend to make, um, at the end of the day, it is you making them. You might be inspired or influenced by outside parties, outside circumstances, but at the end of the day, you were making that choice to do what you're going to do. And now there are situations where you might be less in power or for your own well-being, you might be forced to make a choice you don't really want to, but there's really no other options on the table.
Yeah, and so sometimes you feel like your options may be limited, right? What you feel like you can do. But then even in those times, a lot of the experts and the gurus or business people or anyone that tries to coach you to get you unstuck, like with the people who I coach, so often there are more options available. You just don't see it because you only know what you know. You don't realize there could be more options out there. So, but yeah, it's just you have no choice but to choose.
Right.
Even if you abdicate your choice and you just go with whatever is happening, choosing not to choose is a choice,
Right.
or
You
letting
made a choice
somebody
not to
else.
choose
Yeah,
for yourself.
yeah. And so it's so interesting because, and I think that's really important. So I wanted to talk about why is that important? Why is it important that we realize that, especially when we're going to talk about in the context of spirituality, right? Coming out of Christianity for both of us and for a lot of people, any kind of a dogmatic, controlling belief system, that sort of really hampers that aspect of us to know and understand that we have choice. And we can get into the layers of that. But so it's so important. And for me personally, I feel like that's one of the biggest things that I've been learning in the last couple of years for certain, even in the last several months, even more so. Um, just even realizing how I didn't even know what I wanted when I came to the realization that, I coming into life and what direction do I want to take. I had a stark realization I didn't truly know what I wanted. That the idea of being able to choose what I genuinely want was so foreign to me because it was always, oh God, what do you want? Oh Lord, what should I do?
Thy
And when I
will
was
be
doing that, I
done.
was trying to get a sense of leading, but ultimately I was just checking in with myself anyway to see what the hell I wanted to do. But I didn't have the ability to even realize it's me choosing what I wanted. I had to give that choice to somebody else, even though I was the one making it. It's really
Right.
sort of a mind fuck.
It is, and that's a really good point, Daryl, because at the end of the day, it is you still making the choice, but you're putting the, I guess, the stress end of it on this potential figment of your imagination.
Right.
You think, oh well, it's really in your hands, God, or whatever you want to refer to it. Oh, it's in the universe's hands, or whatever the case is. But at the end of the day, you're still going to make a decision unless you just sit back and wait for an answer that somehow contradicts what you feel deep down inside is the right move.
Right. So then,
But
or
you're
you,
just so convinced because of indoctrination, because of like self-depreciative conditioning, that your opinions suck and there's no way you could come up with anything right because you're morally bankrupt, you're totally depraved, so you don't have the right answers, and you got to wait on the only holy being in the universe to give you the right answer. So how long do
right.
you sit there and wait for that?
And I don't know about you. How often did you actually feel like you got, you got an answer?
I think, I mean, it's all subjective, but I mean, I do recall moments where I felt like I was receiving an answer that I was waiting for.
Yep.
But of course, there's like a confirmation bias there. The first time something comes up that is in the ballpark of like, that's what I was going for. This must be my answer.
Right. Right. Right.
You
So
kind
then
of
you're,
just you go with it, and you're like, okay. And a lot of the times it works out. There's sometimes it doesn't, and you kind of, well, I guess this was a test, or this is something for me to learn.
whatever it was, I'll
There is
remember.
a truth to that. There's something to learn,
Yeah.
but there's not necessarily a disciplinarian uh, or an instructor out there trying to get you to learn it. Maybe you are your own instructor. You are your own student of you know life.
Yeah. No, for sure. And it's so interesting because then you don't learn how to make good choices. See that reminds me of a couple things. That's why I like talking to you because it's just like, things pop and fire when I hear you talk. So like there's two things. So I have a friend, my wife's really good friend is a therapist and she works with kids. And she had said that when parents raise kids and like hyper control their life and don't give them the ability to really make choices, try to dictate everything, then that child grows up to be an adult who can't function or severely limited in their function. They can't make a decision. They don't know how to make a decision because one was always made for them, or they were always fearful that they were going to make the wrong one and always looking to the parent to what's the decision I should make. Well, number one, religion being the biggest parent, the big sky daddy. So it emotionally stunts and hinders our ability to actually make decisions. But then the other thing, it's I was on the mission field and had a guy come on the mission field who was a businessman and he wanted to do ministry and he decides to come up and he's going to be sort of in charge of operations for the mission. And he and I were having a conversation and he was just like, man, I go into these council meetings with these guys. First of all men, women weren't allowed, so that's a big problem right there. You know, I
Right.
have nothing wrong with guys. Guys, I mean, we're great, but you need a broad perspective of decision making. If you have just a bunch of guys in a room, you're not necessarily going to make the best decision for everyone. Women have a good intuition we need. Um, but that's a the point. He said he knew in the business world, he knew how to read people and he knew how to politically maneuver. And he's like, I know how these guys are going to vote on an issue before we even go in the room. And yet they all insist that it was the Holy Spirit guiding them. And they have this conviction that this is what God is telling me we need to do. And so, man, even that's another. So there's a whole other piece. Now, not only do I not have to make a decision, I get to make a decision that I want, not realizing I'm making a decision, but then all of a sudden the God of the universe agrees with me and it has to be this way.
Right.
Or I'm going to chop your head off or write a law to sequester you out of society or whatever. So it's just like that dog taking away our choice has all these ripple effects when we
Right.
don't own our own ability to choose. I guess what I'm saying is look at all the ripple effects it has. It's crazy.
Right. And so there's not really, when you're going down that road, the religious path, overall, especially the more fundamentalist it becomes in its beliefs and behaviors, and the company one keeps, it's definitely a situation where free will is not really free will. Um, there's the whole like, yeah, you make your choice, you do what you're gonna do. We're just telling you that this is what'll happen if you make the wrong choice.
Right.
Um, and
Eternal
it's
conscious
passive
suffering. Make your
aggressive
choice
threats
well.
too, and it's passive aggressive threats because it's not them saying we're gonna hurt you, we're gonna take your legs or do whatever,
Yeah.
beat you down or anything. You're gonna be subject to the wrath of our God, basically.
Right. So
Which
I
nobody knows what that could really entail. But
yeah.
all is it's supposed to last for an eternity. Which anybody who's ever been in any kind of pain should immediately be like, "There's something wrong with this God that would subject
Right.
anybody for any reason to an eternity of abject torture."
Yeah.
Um,
And
or
again,
any
it's yeah.
even the worst thing you could do on this planet in our short lifetime versus an unending penalty for for doing it.
Yeah.
It's unbalanced.
It's amazing. And so the power trip that comes from being able to be the one on the power side of that equation. So and we see it right now in American politics, right? I mean, just the unbelievable just plays that are made. All of a sudden, oh, now God's against trans people. Where's the Bible verse that says it's just so ridiculous, you know?
Right.
But then they have this power move. It's just what they want. But now you have God as the one who's telling you to do this. And then instantly, all you got to do is you have these throngs of people that have been so conditioned that they can't trust themselves, that they're evil, and you have to do what God says. And they've been conditioned that the leaders in their life are the ones telling them what God says.
Right.
Um, and or even if they feel like they're making their own decision, the leaders know how to manipulate because the ones that are really good at it end up floating to the top of the manure pile. And so it's such an amazingly toxic thing all around not owning your own ability to choose what you want to think and believe.
Right. Because anything that goes against their way, even what goes on in your own sub, in your own consciousness, apart from everybody else, where no one else can even, nobody can hear your thoughts, and no one can
Right.
see what you're thinking or anything. But there's a there's a there's something about religion that has convinced people that if I think a certain way, it's a thought crime, and this God is gonna get me for it.
Right.
I can't
Even
even hide from this God in my own head or in my
yeah.
own heart, which is apparently wicked
Oh,
beyond
I know. Oh
beyond
man.
repair. You know,
It's crazy. So, I mean, so how did can you trace back to I like to share a little bit of my story and then maybe give you time to think about, but I'm curious, what are some of the first choices that we both made that helped us to begin to step out and move? Because I actually still have a spirituality, so I still do think you can get guidance. I think there is something bigger than what our senses can pick up, right? I'm not throwing all of it away. I'm not a materialist, it just never resonates well with me. But still, then it's me choosing. I'm getting these impressions. I'm trying to make a decision. I'm weighing out what's physically in front of me, but I'm also weighing out my intuition, which can come from years of lived experience, but then also, you know what? I'm open to receive guidance, but still yet I know it's my intuition. And I'm still the one who has to make the decision. Um, I like when I got married and met my wife, we definitely had synchronicities, things lined up and in such a way that we're at the time we attributed it to God bringing us together. But I haven't lost that. I still, especially now, it's still very much so like, okay, we're still on track, we're still on sync, and things are better than ever, right? Um, but I think I remember one of the times that a decision I made that sort of started a ripple effect. I mean, there's actually a couple. One of them, let's just pander to my co-host here, reaching out to your wife for a reading. I called a witch and asked her for a reading.
yeah,
Holy fuck. That was terrifying.
yeah.
And
Well,
at the time, I wasn't quite sure where my wife was. We were both going through this journey, and her story is her story to tell. But we didn't move at the exact same pace, right? Um, we were in different places in different times, and a lot of things I was going through, I didn't feel like I could tell her. And I think you can relate to that from what Beth was saying on that podcast. Um, but just that moment of taking reach, and I felt like it was just I desired it. I wanted it. I wanted to try something that I was told was taboo. I already knew her because she was also a moderator on the Facebook group. So I knew she wasn't an evil person, you know. And I'm like, I want to experience this. And I reached out for that. And that little spiritual choice I made help to start to open things up to continue to move. So, yeah, so that's an example to me of a small choice that was spiritual that was my own that's helped to unfold things. I mean, so I'm curious if you have anything like any of those for you.
well, for me, I mean, during my time in seminary, like for the last year and a half or so that I was attending and working on toward my degree, I was going through what I guess would be best explained as like an elongated night of the soul. Like I just was struggling so much. Any kind of going to worship, doing anything like that, just felt like a chore. It got to the point where like studying and homework just I was like kind of phoning it in. I mean, I was getting the good grades because I was able to BS pretty well, but I just my heart wasn't in it. You know, my head was only in it enough to like make sure that I continued to do well because I'd already put so much time in and so much of myself into it that I didn't want it to be for nothing. So I just kept working at it, and I wasn't even talking to Beth about it. I mean, I think she could tell that I was starting to burn out and something was different, you know. But at the time, I wasn't aware that she was also going through her own sense of self evaluation, you know.
Hmm.
And I remember when I found out about her her witchcraft stuff and like consulting cards and astrology and everything else, you know, I think uh, my original response to her was it was out of line. It wasn't right. I mean, I think it was just all self preservation. My first thought was because yes, I've been doing what I've been doing behind closed doors, and it's all me. I can control that. I can put up a front for everybody that I need to for now. Which should also tell you that at that point, subconsciously, I I had already checked out on like actually believing that this puritanical God exists and is, watching as
Right.
I make these changes and I start doing my own study outside of the faith. So when she told me, or when I found out, because it didn't really happen that she like one day just confided in me. I had happened to come across it because somebody found out through the grapevine, which is social media,
Yeah.
that she was into this stuff. So I think part of it was I was pissed because why didn't she talk to me about it? But I guess in the case she didn't feel like she didn't know if she could based on what my path was. But I also didn't like being um, caught off guard.
Right.
But once I realized that she was genuine about what she was doing, and this was really her, and what she could do, it was really amazing. No, and I was already saying, I mean, I personally don't have anything against any of this. I just don't want to lose everything I've worked hard for.
Right.
And that's why I was upset and scared at the time. But as time went on and I continued to deconstruct and self study and just you know look at all angles, I mean, it just became clearer and clearer that any one of us can have our own path, and we don't have to be afraid of some uh, cosmic micromanager
Right.
keeping tabs on us and looking to burn our asses if we get outside of the box that I like to refer to it as exclusive religion. For me,
Yeah.
it's not just Christianity. I don't want to throw all of Christianity under the bus. Uh, any any fundamentalist version of religion, I consider exclusive religion when it's
Yeah.
their way or the highway, and there's no lighter branches. There are no like in Christianity. There's universalist Christianity. There's progressive liberal Christianity. And they're looking for more of the example of Jesus, the social justice
Mm-hmm.
version of Jesus, rather than all the dogma. Which I think more and more in my writings, I think I've made it clear that I'm not attacking religion uh, just outright, but it's more I am against any kind of heavy dogmatic stance
Mm-hmm.
that paints this God, this version of divinity
Yeah.
for everybody and says you have to get on board with this one. You have to bow to this God and do exactly as we do and say as we say and think as we think and everything else. Um, when it started becoming clear to me that it's like you don't have to do that. I think the scariest thing in the world is this religious certainty that so many people carry,
Yeah.
and it's been passed down. But at some point, I mean, you just have to think about it. You have to consider that maybe there is more or maybe less, depending on how you're looking at it, than what they're pushing, what you've
Yeah.
been
So
told, what you've been led to devote your life to. Um,
yep. A
and for me,
lot
it's
of
just
yeah.
compartmentalizing real God, as I like to put it. It just seems dishonorable, if anything. It's not. It's not respecting the mystery of infinity, the mystery of peerless transcendence, just absolute magnanimousness. I mean, I
Yeah.
love.
So,
I think I've recently started using something more as another way to describe what I think a god might be, if there is a god. See, I'm not anywhere close to the pole of religious fanaticism any more than I am at the pole of devout secularism. I'm definitely like you in this regard that I haven't completely given up the ghost. I think there might be something more. That's why I consider myself these days drifting back and forth between casual theism and curious agnosticism,
Yep.
because I feel like I've experienced, I've seen, I've heard, I've felt too much of something beyond just natural explanation to just completely cut ties. But at the same time, I refuse to put it in a box.
Yeah, so it's a nonstop ending string of choices based on experiences, right? And then knowing, what it is, just remembering Beth's story and from what it's like when someone tries to take that choice away from you. And that's a great way to really, I think, for a lot of us as we've deconstructed, as we've come away from a dogmatic religion, whether experiencing it firsthand or at least, seeing just the horrors that people have experienced when someone tries to take away their choice. Or so it's just one of those things that, again, choice is so valuable. And I think what I'm hoping in this conversation so far that I would wish for people to get out of it is more of a courage to step up and start owning their own choice, because of all the destruction that comes when you don't own it and you passively let someone else take it, or you don't, you just let yourself drift around, or how it goes counter to a healthy human being. You want to have that choice, right? And so someone else can't manipulate you. So you make good choices, because if you don't, if you're waiting for something else to do it for you or someone else to tell you what to do, you don't develop that strength of that emotional intellectual muscle to make a good choice. And you own your choice is yours. You are you. You're in your own body. Everything you experience, even from the outside world, gets filtered through your own brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is no other choice but to choose.
Right. You have to follow your head and heart agreement. I
I
mean,
love that.
it's all
Yep.
about your conscience. If you
Yep.
if you see something or hear something that doesn't line up with the morals, you know, within there, what you're
Yeah.
dealing with, the life that you have, the choices you make are all going to affect you first and foremost. If you're reading something in a scripture and it seems to go completely against that, then you should stick to yourself and follow what you know inside is right instead of
Right.
just appeasing this legal code that
Well, I'm sorry. I love so I mean, like scripture and Jesus. I acknowledge that I'm not going to automatically assume everything that's in between the covers of that book are exactly the way it was, but there are definitely nuggets in there that I love. And one of the things I love was Jesus saying, "You've heard it said, but I say to you," like what cojones? What just absolute audacity to stand up and the own choice, his own thought, and to say, to go counter that choice, to going off all the time by himself to meditate. Let's give it at least that, and to connect with source, and then to go out and do right. And so that choice right there to buck the system and to do just what he wanted to do.
Mhm.
As I said before, it makes sense to me why a religion that wants to control people, in order, what are you going to do with Jesus? Because he did that all the time.
Oh yeah.
The only thing you can do is make him the exception. He said he was the rule. He said my favorite Bible verse still forever is the high priestly prayer of John 17, where he says, "Father, I pray that they will be one as we are one, I and you and me and them." I love that because it's all this big jumbled mess, all one.
Right.
And that's what we're supposed to have. But of course, that makes me God. That makes me equal. you know.
Yeah.
And so you have to make Jesus the exception. He has to be the only one that's divine. Nobody else gets to be, because as soon as you find out that you just have that much power within yourself, then you can't be controlled anymore, you
Exactly.
know, because
And
you
you know
have that power. You
that's the
make the choice.
that's the irony of it, because this he's Jesus is the figurehead of religious zealotry, and it's ironic because he comes off so much more like a spiritual humanist. I mean, he's very much more people based. If you read the scriptures, you look
Yeah.
at them and you look at the stories of him, he seems to be a lot more interested in people than he does about keeping with all the status quo of the religious way. You know, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
he wasn't a social climber in that world. He wasn't a he didn't politicize anything. It was all just very much like what can I do to help people and to open their eyes and know that they can help themselves if they just stop feeding into this BS. You know,
Yep. Oh, yeah. We
and it's
both went to Bible
crazy.
school. We know how Christianity has nothing to do with Jesus, and how they just, how the mental hermeneutic theological gymnastics that take place to completely isolate Jesus from anything to do with Christianity. You know what I mean? It's astounding.
Right.
Um, yeah,
I remember reading somewhere somebody had referred to Jesus as a Buddhist witch, and I thought that was really great.
I love that.
That sounds about right.
There we go. A Buddhist witch. Perfect. Oh man. So here's something else I wanted to share. Sort of like halfway through, and I thought there's another piece, something I discovered, and I want this to be a conversation, and I want this to sort of be fodder for people to begin to expand and ask questions and look at things a little differently and have a little courage to do so. And I was on TikTok. Yes, I know they're trying to ban TikTok because it's evil, because the Chinese are going to get your information, because only Mark gets your information. But anyway, there's a TikToker called the Dark Cyber Poet, and he had this little TikTok thing. And I put the book on my Amazon wish list, and I haven't gotten the book yet. So all of that to say is I don't know hardly shit about this, but it's intriguing and it's just a thought to share, right? So I want to just sort of give you a summary of this little TikTok video, and it's about this idea of spirituality and choice. And what's beautiful about it, that for thousands of years ago, those people that reflected and contemplated and tried to look within to understand what's going on without, saw some things, right? So he talks about this book. It's called the Vigyan Bhavara Tantra. Okay. And I'm actually going to take this because I am not even sure I'm saying it right. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to throw it in here. And I think that goes to everyone, right? Hopefully. Well, we'll see. Hopefully everyone saw that. That is the book, right? And so it is 3,000 years before Christ. It is 112 different pathways that have been thought out how people can um, achieve liberation or salvation, or to grow as a human, to expand themselves, right? Whatever phrase you want to use. And so these 112 pathways have been encapsulated into various schools of yoga. Okay. And yoga means union. All that to say is it's been taught in different ways in different places, one way or another. And so it's interesting. He says, and I think it's probably true, that everyone follows one of these ways, whether they know it or not, because these are just things that humans do, because we have a general bend to want to grow, right? So, like the first one that he talks about is one that everyone in the West knows. It's called Hatha Yoga, and that's the yoga of posture. Um, and it's interesting because I have a friend who got into yoga, um, and this person, just in doing it, started to have trauma released, had started to feel happier, and started to grow and expand, and started to see Christianity to be the fairy tale that it is, in the sense of the man-made part of it, just from the yoga. And of course, they went on, they got some more teaching and got more in depth with it, which is funny because I had other people who were Christians who said they refused to do yoga because it would take them away from Christianity. And yeah, probably would. But
But
that's
that's
another story.
that's a good, if I could jump in there,
Yeah.
because you saying that, they openly said that they would not even consider trying it because it would take them away from Christianity.
Right.
If that was their wording, word for word, because it would.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was
That
might be
says
my
how
summary,
little.
but that's the whole. Yeah, the whole point
That
is
says
it's
how
evil.
little
It's
their
demonic,
hope.
right?
How little their hope is in this religious path.
Yeah.
Because if they know anything, they try anything outside of their comfort zone or their wheelhouse, spiritual wheelhouse, um, it's automatically going to just um, level their foundation.
Right, right.
It
Going
just
to a
seems like
class and doing
it's
some
obviously on
stretches
shaky
is good.
ground as it is, right?
Right. Don't go to this class and do some stretches and actually stop and think for yourself and relax your brain, because that's going to take you away from the one true God who is in control of everything.
Right. Or like, oh, I'm not going to read anything up on, Buddhism or Hinduism or Wicca or read the Satanic Bible or read any kind of New Age material or anything like that, because just the mere idea of looking at these other ideas is just going to jar me so much that
Yeah.
it's going to cause me to doubt. Well, okay, if you already know that it's going to cause you to doubt, then maybe that says something more about where you're at already.
Yeah, what
Maybe
are
you're
you?
already on the verge of deconstructing and you're afraid.
Yeah. I mean, if you're that afraid, maybe inside there you want to make a different choice, but you're afraid to make that choice. That's the other thing about, all of this too, is not feeling like you have a choice or afraid to make choices or having a sense that this is wrong, and then of you afraid that you can't, and I just even recently reflecting back, and I was just seeing a counselor too, just as my continue to grow, my continued journey of growth, and just realized how I, from a very young age, knew that Christianity was a farce, but I could not choose anything else. So I got out of it by saying, well, it's about Jesus. I don't care about the doctrine. I don't care about church. It's Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. But it's because I knew that all of this was crap. And there's one thing that I can hold on to this, and I don't have to worry about anything else, you know. But of
Yeah.
course, it was just a coping mechanism as a kid. And it worked, right?
Well, that's what it was for me. I grew up in a home that was, considered itself Christian, and we all, I guess, were socially Christian, culturally Christian, but there wasn't like a lot of um, push in that or anything. We'd go to church
Right.
on the weekend, but there was no Bible reading throughout the week. There was no studies and like heavy laying it on thick, as I was growing up. So, when Beth and I came together and we ended up making a choice to be Christians when we did, we came in because we liked the community and we
Right.
felt that, we had a home in that community, and all our experience was very positive, and we weren't in a fundamentalist bubble at the time. So none of the really heavy-handed doctrines and dogma were pressed on us. If I had ended up going to a more liberal or more progressive or more just relaxed seminary, we might still be in it today. I mean, I don't know. But that's the irony of it. The fact
Yeah.
that I was, for like 4.5, 5 years or whatever, I was so ingrained with this stuff. Like coming into it and experiencing that, not
Yeah.
growing up with it, I was already kind of set up to fail and didn't even know it because I was I was already going in with a less intense background. It's one thing if you grow up in it and it's all you've ever known versus this doesn't all sound right. I've never felt this way about this or that. And so
Yep.
I have all these questions like, why do you think that this is how it is? And why does the Bible say this? And why do they do this? And how can God think this is okay? I mean, how can a moral God do this? How can a moral God do that? And then never really getting good answers other than
Yep.
like, well, you just need to be appreciative of the mercy you've received, or
Right.
uh, we can't understand what God's about. Well, then why should we be worshiping this God? Why should we? I mean, if this God is not going to treat us, like in a way that we can actually relate to it. I mean, we're supposed to be in a relationship with this God, right? So, like, why does it feel like it's very hands off and like the only relational aspect is us serving this God or talking to other people about this God versus actually connecting with this God?
Yeah. And so, but right there, you can see that you had that choice. It was easier for you to see the 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 falseness of the dogma because you weren't brainwashed in it as a kid. Let's just be honest, right? You
Right,
had more choice. I had more brainwashing. It was harder for me to
right,
break free because I was conditioned to hate myself and not trust my choice. You had that more of that ability to say, "Hey, I can make a choice. This doesn't make sense to me," And so, of course, you didn't. It didn't fit. But so here's an interesting thing, though, because that's all that is perfect. Segue to this next piece with the whole different pathways to liberation. Because what about those people? You said maybe if you would have had a more liberal seminary, maybe you would have stayed in. Well, guess what? There is one of these pathways that fits perfectly for people that would choose and would want to still follow and emulate Jesus, right? The more
yeah,
progressive Christians. And so I'm sharing this so people can see that the crazy how much choice we actually have.
yeah,
So according to this tradition, bhakti yogi are called devotion yogis. And that is when you take your devotional awareness of yourself and you focus it on an external object that you choose, or an avatar or a being or a person that you choose that resonates with you, that feels right for you, that you think will help you grow. You put your devotion on that object, and that is how you grow. So you could put Christ there. Catholics can put Mary there. You know, whether Mary was real or not, or virgin or not, it's like the aspect, the avatar, the just the myth of it. There's power in that helps excite your imagination and helps to connect you to something beyond yourself to help you grow. And that is a valid choice.
yeah.
But it's a choice, and it's the choice that I'm making that works for me, and there are other choices for others. I think that's the big difference between that and fundamentalism.
Yeah, and I'll say something about that too. I
Yeah.
uh, I fully support anyone for whatever they want to do if it actually makes them better people, if it
Yep.
makes them treat people better, if it helps you in your growth, if it you become a more mature, healthy person overall, happier person overall, and if that's based on certain beliefs you have, certain behavior that you've adopted. Um, as long as it leads you to a more humanitarian way of being or a more egalitarian way of being, then I am all for it. I mean, do whatever brings you to that because that's very important. So I think that's
Yeah.
very important. But I think, going back to the whole choice thing and why
Yep.
it doesn't work with exclusive religion because they push this idea that we have this God who's really upset with us because we somehow screwed up way back in the beginning of time, and this God has never let that go, and it got so bad that it needed sacrifices and all this stuff, and it's angry, and
Yeah.
it's gonna continue to incur its wrath upon us if we don't turn to it, and if you're the day comes when you are passing on, you don't want to come face to face with this final boss unless you've already confessed your sins and been cleansed in blood, or whatever, all that jargon about
Right. And so
grace theology, atonement theology.
yeah.
um, the problem is, fear does not give anyone a choice. Just laying on the thick this idea that, like, you make the choice, it's all on you. If
Right.
you have all this evidence and you're making the choice not to accept it. No, all I have is you guys filling my head and my heart with fear, so much
Yep.
so that I start wondering, well, maybe there is something to this, because I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not certain of anything. So
Right.
Pascal's wager, maybe it's better to just go ahead and believe, fake it till you make it, basically, uh, and find out at the end of the day that it was the right move to go down this path, or base your life on evidence, tangible, measurable, repeatable evidence, sensory evidence, and then find out that this God was just hiding all this time, which makes you wonder. It's like, okay, why would this God torture anybody or treat them less? Because it chose to never reveal itself in like a worldwide press conference where everyone
Right.
has the same ability, same amount of knowledge to make a conscious decision for it. And
Right.
that's the biggest thing for me. It's just like this God will not show up.
Right.
Any
Because
one of us could take the time to challenge this God to show up. Meet me at the playground at 3 o'clock. This
right. And
God
that
is not going to
and
show
then
up.
this God chooses not to.
And this is not an atheistic statement. This is a anti-fundamentalist statement. I do not
Right.
believe in a wrathful God. I believe maybe there is something greater, but it's a lot more secure than this petty, vengeful wraith.
Yeah. Because I mean, you said it in the very beginning, just how you described it: exclusive, no choice. This is it.
Right.
And it's about choice. It's about what do you want to believe that's going to help you move forward.
Right.
And that's what this is about. This is a conversation around that, just
And
to help
yeah.
begin to think about it, right? And then even so, we always feel like, and just so the atheists don't feel left out, right? So even in this, there is room for people that just are having that have just done it all, done with all of it. Give me something a lot more solid and tangible. Even of these 112 things, there was a Jnana yogi, and that is a yogi that achieves liberation and growth through knowledge alone. It's a scientist. So even scientists, according to this ancient knowledge, and the Aaron's video earlier today, what was great is like, we all have a tendency to look at ancient people and think they're stupid. That's our own bias for our own current
Right.
age and time. Even then, they knew that of all the ways that human beings can grow, there are human beings that want to just pursue knowledge and understand, and in that understanding, find liberation and growth and expansion.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. I mean, canonization, orthodoxy, that is nothing more than theological paralysis. It
Right.
stops you. I mean, it stops you from moving forward, from thinking beyond the box that you're in.
Well, yeah, it stops knowledge, it stops science, it stops growth. I mean, we're
Yeah.
seeing that in this country. Just
And what
the
choice does anybody have if that's what we end up dealing with? I mean, this sense that, we cannot upset this being that has never really given us proof that it's ever been here or will
right,
ever be here or is here now. And that
right.
and then it opens up even more of a can of worms when you think about theology, because there's the free will argument, but then there's also this idea of predestination that you gotta fumble around with too.
Well,
This
yeah, but
idea
then
that this God made everything happen just a certain way, had this whole plan in effect, every little movement, every little thought we've ever had, anything that's ever happened, any neuron firing in our brain. was part of this God's plan. So how can anything be on us?
Right.
Any decision we make, even a decision to choose to go on this religious path versus this spiritual path.
Well, see, and
I mean,
that's the whole point. Is that
it
was
leaves us in
one?
a defeatist place.
Yeah,
Like, where how do you even know?
but see, it doesn't work because that was a human being's way of trying to make sense of it all. Quite frankly, it's that human being's way to try to make something make sense that's nonsense.
Right.
But that's that human being's way. And so you could look at it and instantly go, that's ridiculous. I don't like that. I don't, that my head and heart do not agree with that. And there you can choose to go walk away. And that's how it should be. Let people come up. If someone, I mean, if someone wants to believe nonsense, okay, maybe right now at this moment in their life, they need to believe this nonsense in order to navigate or get through or whatever. But that's their choice to believe their nonsense, and I have the choice to listen to it and to do anything with it. I can ignore it completely.
Yeah.
I can maybe learn something from it. I could whatever. So the power of choice is just amazing. But it's not good for if you want to control people. If your goal is control, then giving people choice is not a good idea.
And I'm gonna leapfrog on that too about choice, because like you said, this was one guy's opinion, one person, thought this up, or maybe a series had kind of theologians throughout
Mhm.
time had kind of put this together through their interpretations and shared with their pupils, who like went on to share with their pupils, and it just kept carrying on. What if these scriptures that were written in the first place, these even before they were written, it was just verbal tradition
Yep.
amongst people groups, um, based on mythology that they never claimed wasn't mythology. I mean,
Right. That was Aaron's video earlier.
if anything, it's just musing. It's just them. It was just people sharing what the best way they could share their experience about what they thought divinity was.
Yep.
It was a description. These stories, these ideas were all descriptions. They weren't prescriptions. When it
Yep.
became like the state religion, when it became like the be all end all faith, movement, that's when the problem happened. When it's like, well, now we got to narrow down exactly what the rules are, exactly what this God wants,
Yep.
what its nature is, what its issues might be with us, what we can do to better our chances in its presence. Whatever. I mean, it all became this subjective idea that they
Yep.
have made into objective truth, which is just so ridiculous.
Yep. Absolutely.
But
All
anyway,
of that. I got to do this. I'm going to drop Aaron's. I was looking for Aaron's video from today. You guys, if you haven't seen it, here it is. You got to go check out Aaron's video just because it gives you just, if you want to look more about at spirituality and choice than religion and just give you some good food for thought, that's worth checking out. That's really helpful for me today. It was. Yeah, but it's awesome. I mean, that's the point.
yep.
So cool. What else? Anything else you want to throw in to cap off this hour before we wrap it up?
I don't know. It's been really really good. Not that
Yeah,
I doubted that at all. But
I know. It's freeing to me.
it
It's
is
freeing. It's
therapeutic.
freeing because and so the whole point of this wasn't to talk about all the spirituality choices you can have. I want people to know that you have a choice,
Right.
and also not to be afraid of spirituality, because I think to me that's just growth as a person.
Right.
It's how do you want to interact with the world, and and if you're a strict materialist, okay, hey, I'm not gonna diss you for that. But for anyone else that wants to at least be open and interact with the world in a way that leaves room for mystery without flying off the seat of your pants, you get to choose what resonates with you. And with spirituality, you can choose your own adventure.
Right.
Um,
And
and
I
yeah,
want to jump on that too.
yeah,
You just keep saying things, Daryl, that I just gotta keep piggybacking on. I love how you put that out there. You don't want to give this laundry list of options, for people to choose from. Like, oh, here's a list of the only options there are. It's not like a college syllabus. It's not like if you go on like a university's website and they give you like all the programs you could possibly um, choose from.
Yep.
Um, the great thing about having making your own spiritual path, or it's a custom made thing. I mean, it's each one of
Yep.
us is living our own lives, and we each have our own values and our own principles and hobbies and things that like matter to us, like things that excite us. We all have our own rituals and routines. So something I've talked with Aaron and Derek about on their Phreology Friday when I was a guest was syncretism. That was the message of that evening. That was the topic of discussion. And for anybody who doesn't know what syncretism is, it's basically a big no-no with heavy duty religion, because it basically says you can kind of, it's like a buffet of ethereal ideas, like trying different things, mixing and matching um, belief structures and behavioral structures, uh, combining ritualistic ideas. It's something that it's a free thing. It's like a free for all when it comes to delving into the other side, and it's so
Yeah.
great because it gives you the option to find inspiration in many um, intellectual giants and spiritual masters of old, and not feel like I have to claim this one and these other ones are all just false. No, it
Yeah.
gives you a chance to, read up and study different people who had revolutionary ideas, combine them, uh, any kind of magic you want to get involved with, it's not off the table. I mean, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is that you know that you're not hurting anybody and you're not doing anything that would potentially hurt anybody else. It's the difference between spirituality and religion in this facet is that we still know that anything is lawful, but it's not beneficial. We choose based on what our internal moral compass tells us
Right.
is fine to do, versus, well, it's just because this God said that we can't, so we're not going to do it.
Well, I
Or
mean,
we're
that's the
not
whole
going to think
point.
it. We're not going to say
Yeah.
it because
But
this
that's
God.
how you also fine tune and grow your own moral compass.
Yeah,
Because, you say that, and then the religious people are like, oh, no, but then we're going to have anarchy. Yeah, maybe it'll be messy for a little while. It's messy in your own life as you're growing, but then you get to understand yourself. You get to trust yourself. What a beautiful way, like the free market spirituality. I call it that, where it's all open. Go after it. It's like, and we need community, right? So
yeah,
these are your own choices, but we're human and humans are social beings. You're not going to
yeah,
get around that. But then you join with other people that you resonate with, and you don't have to agree with them completely.
exactly.
When you know it's about choice, you can be your authentic self,
That's right.
and they will respect that because they want you to respect their authentic self. And you don't want to harm yourself. And when you start to open yourself up this way, you realize that we're all human beings, we're relational, we're all interconnected. So if
Yes,
I harm you, it is going to harm me eventually, if not
it'll
immediately.
come back around. I do
Hey,
believe.
no, that's not even karma or some mystic woo woo. That's just reality of being a social creature in an interconnected web of relationships and energy.
Right.
And so, but then also, you can come and go. You can be in this group for a while. And when you grow, you can leave without them being mad at you, without you
Right.
feeling bad about that,
No,
because you're
no
just
burn bridges.
growing.
Just it's time for me to move on in this part of my journey. I mean, it's not people. It's not you're either in or you're out. It's not that way, and that's what's really great about it.
Yeah, and then hopefully, if ever ideally, like this would never happen. It'd take a while because we're all so conditioned to be afraid of vulnerability, be afraid of being ourselves. So there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of crap in the world that keeps us from just flipping a switch and saying, "Hey, we can have a better society if we all can just, not harm ourselves and not harm others and honor each other's choices." Um, but as you do that, then also shitty ideas will just disappear because people have the freedom to express it and try it and challenge it. And if it's a bad idea, it drops away, which is like that's sort of what science is anyway. You postulate
Yeah,
your theory, you put it out there, you try to disprove it, and if it's a crappy idea, it'll go away. But
right,
but then even so, that crappy idea at some point might spur somebody on to find an ingenious idea, even if the idea itself is crappy. So
right.
this just yeah, the last minute before we're ready to wrap up, this is like to me, this is like bing.
It's true
Um,
though.
but it's just like it completely. This is how we function well when we have the freedom to choose, and we choose and don't harm ourselves, don't harm others, respect each other's freedom of choice and thought. This is how we thrive as a society. This is how we thrive as human beings.
Yeah,
And you know, if we're made in God's image, I would think that, if this is how we thrive, and if this is how we're wired, and if this is what makes us truly joyful, happy, and fulfilled, that is truth
yeah,
because it's lived out, it's tested out in the lives of people, and it's producing the same result across centuries and time. Um, and so it's sort of a death knell for the BS that isn't true and the people that you put all your but I understand that. You put all your eggs in that basket, you're scared because you don't know how to choose. This is the choice. This is the only choice. And if this is the wrong choice, then you're like a child that's arrested development. It's been sleeping in mommy and daddy's basement for 30 years and never had to make a choice in their life. And all of a sudden, tough love, mom and dad kick you out on your ass. And now you're like, what? That's scary. So yeah, you're gonna fight to try to stay in mom and dad's basement. There you go. Christianity, spiritual arrested development, sleeping in daddy's basement when you're 50 years old and you should have had a job by now.
yeah. It's true though. I mean, it's
Oh,
good to promote ethereal diversity. We just have so many different so many different cultures across the globe. Just so many different uh, values and traditions and just stuff that we can identify with, and it's at our choosing. It's what we want to, what matters to us, and that's what matters. And being open to what other people want to do, not just accepting it, but celebrating it, letting
yeah.
people be who they are at their core, and not having to put on a certain face to fit in with a strict uh, community. It broadens your socio-cultural acumen when you open your doors to other ways alternative to your own, and
Yeah.
it gives you the opportunity to maybe realize maybe there's more to it than what I think. Maybe there's more to it than what I've been led, to understand about the world.
Yep. And so it's interesting because part of what we're having to deal with is human nature and our way we want to fit in. You need to fit in society, and we want to be around people who are like us. And I think up until this point in time, and I'm hoping maybe as a society, as a culture, as a global species, we're ready to see this differently. But it had always been external up until now. You need to look like me, you need to think like me. well, no one thinks like you. Every human being thinks differently. So I need to pretend that we think like each other by
Right.
speaking like each other, dressing like each other. But what if we chose to make the common denominator just the fact that I'm human and your own uniqueness? What if the actual we united around I feel safe when you are truly your authentic self, Ben. When I see that beautiful little mohawk you got sporting, which I would never sport, but it looks like badass on you,
Well, thank you.
and I'm not offended or I'm not put out. I'm not oh, I can't hang out with mohawk people. No, and I can celebrate that mohawk because you're unique and you're diverse and you're expressing it. That is our common ground because now I can express my uniqueness and I don't have to be afraid of you rejecting me. And so I wonder, that's just something that's I like that.
Yeah.
If we don't unite on surface, we unite on the heart of what it is to be human, being free and vulnerable, fully ourselves. And I'm not going to be happy unless I see you and know that you're your full expression of yourself, because then I can be.
Yes.
And that's the common ground that we can have.
Yes, Daryl. I respect you and I appreciate you and I support you in being the genuine article that you are. So
That's it.
that's what matters.
Well, now we just solved all the problems of the world. I think we can be done.
I know. Uniqueness is virtuousness.
There we go. I like that. Sweet. All right, man. It's always a treat to be with you.
It is.
And I think, and we're going to close it this way. Something that's important to each of us that folds together really nicely. For me, my wish for you, anyone watching this as you go through your week or the rest of your day, that you will just stay curious.
Yes, because thinking is awesome.
Yep, that's us. That's Daryl and Ben. Just stay curious because thinking is awesome.
Thank you, guys.
All right, man. You guys have a good one.